David Smith here with another flipped classroom math lesson. A few tips before we start. First, remember that you can speed up or slow down the playback if that helps you follow along. Second, you can turn the captions on and read my words on the screen. Third, you can pause the video at any time to catch up with your notes or write down questions for class. Today's lesson covers the cosine rule. This is definitely the most complicated rule in this unit on the more advanced trigonometry functions. So let's take a look at that. Same type of diagram that we did in the area formula for a triangle rule and in the sine rule. Little a across from big A, little c across from big C, little b across from big B. It's got to be that way. If you don't do that, you're going to mess up on these problems. So here is the cosine rule. Oh my gosh, there's a lot going on here. A squared equals b squared plus c squared. Now that looks a lot like the Pythagorean theorem. In fact, this is based on the Pythagorean theorem. It's just that since it's not a right triangle, we have this adjustment that we have to make with this kind of complicated term to make it work. So a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times bc times the cosine of a. So let's break that down and talk about it before we use it. So a is the square of one side, okay? And notice all the way at the end of the equation we have cosine a. So on one side you have little a, distance squared. On the very end of it you have cosine big A, which is cosine of that angle opposite of this first side. So for me, that's how I bracket this formula. If I know that side, a squared, then at the very end of the formula I'm going to have cosine of big A. Now in between, pretty straightforward, b squared plus c squared is just the square of the other two sides. And then this term is the kind of messy one. We just have minus 2 times b times c, same two sides as here, times, again, that cosine of a. So this is definitely a good candidate for your cheat sheet, and you probably want to have an example problem on there just so that you can see how this works. Okay, now I have a task for you. What does b squared equal? Okay, so you can use this same format to figure out b squared, what is it going to equal over here? So pause the video and see if you can write that out. Okay, so b squared, the easy part here is going to be, it's going to be a squared plus c squared, the other two sides, and then it's going to be minus 2ac times the cosine of b. Cosine b, like that. So this is just another version of that formula. Now I want you to pause the video again and do it for c squared. What is that going to equal? That's just going to be the two remaining sides. So it's going to be a squared plus b squared minus 2 times a times b times cosine of c. Okay? So there's three ways you can write this formula on the triangle. One of the tricks for these problems is to figure out which piece goes where, which of these formulas you need, based on what you've been given in the triangle. Okay, here's an example problem. And check this out. You're given two sides and the included angle, and you're asked to find the side opposite of that. This is what you need to use the cosine rule. You might look at this problem and go, oh, can I use a sine rule? Well, the problem with the sine rule is you need two angles to use that. I don't have two angles. So the sine rule is not going to work for this one. So to use this rule, to find x, I notice that I have my x is what I don't know and my angle is what I do know. So that's going to be in my position for a. Okay? The one angle is going to determine what that a is. So I'm going to have x squared equals the other two sides, so that's going to be 10 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 10 times 12 times the cosine. Now we're all the way to the end of the formula of 38. So let's break that down, because I think this is probably the most complicated plug-in step you're going to get. Here's what I want. There's my x. So x squared. The opposite angle from x is the one that goes in the cosine, okay? The other two get plugged into the b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c. So these are the other two sides, 10 squared and 12 squared minus 2 times 10 times 12. So that's my correct plug-in step. Now, we have a bunch of algebra to do to solve for x. Let's bring my x squared down. That's 100, 10 squared is 100, plus 144 minus 2 times 10 is 20, times 12 is 240, cosine 38. So now it's getting a little bit more manageable. Let's keep on going. This is going to be 244 minus 240 times cosine 38. So now I'm at a place where I can actually just get out my calculator and solve this one. I'm going to get 244 minus 240 times parentheses around, cut. Okay, now I'm going to get out my calculator and figure out what all that is. So that's 244 minus parentheses 240 times 38 cosine, close my parentheses, hit my equals. I got 54.88. So x squared equals 54.88. So now I just have to take the square root to get my answer. This number is still on my calculator, so I'm just going to tap the square root and I get 7.4. There you go. Okay, here's one for you to try, and I do want you to pause the video right now. There's your cosine rule. Here's your triangle. You've got all the right information in there to do your plug-in step and solve for x. So go ahead and do that. See how far you can get on this problem. Okay, let's see how you did. So here's my x. X squared is going to equal the squares of the other two sides. So 6 squared plus 9 squared minus 2 times 6 times 9 times the cosine of the angle opposite of the x, so that's 42. So there's my plug-in step. Now let's evaluate. X squared is going to equal 36 plus 81 minus 2 times 6 is 12 times 9 is 108, cosine 42. Now I'm ready to pull out my calculator and figure out what that is. 36 plus 81 gives me 117 minus parentheses 108 times 42 cosine, close parentheses, equals 36.7. So x squared equals 36.7. X is going to equal the square root of that. I still have my number on the calculator, so I can just tap square root, and I get 6.06, which rounds to 6.1. Okay, now we're going to do it backwards. We're going to use the cosine rule to find a missing angle. Okay, so we can do that if we know all three sides of the triangle, then we can find any one of those three angles. The three sides determine the triangle absolutely, so the angles can be known. So I want to show you a different version of the cosine rule right up here. What I did is I took that rule with the a squared equals b squared plus c squared, yada, 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 and I solved that for angle A. So that means I'm taking the inverse cosine of this expression. That's going to equal angle A. Okay, so this is a really useful one to have on your cheat sheet. You will need to find angles using the cosine rule. So it's simple. You just have your same sides. You have your b squared, your c squared, your minus a squared, so this is a little different, over the 2bc. But you can see that all these terms are the same terms that are in the regular version of the cosine rule. They're just scrambled together in a slightly different way. But we can do this all day long. So let's take a look. We want to do a plug-in step for this. If you're feeling bold, pause the video and see if you can do a plug-in step using this triangle and that formula. Let's see how you did. So angle C, that's this one right there, it's going to equal, now remember, your a squared in your formula is always the opposite of the angle you're after, okay? So this is going to be cosine inverse of the other two sides, besides this opposite one, so that's going to be 14 squared plus 12 squared minus my opposite side, my 11 squared, And this is going to be over 2 times 14 times 12. So that's the expression that's going to give me angle A. So again, let's summarize that. The side opposite of the angle that we're after is the one that goes in the position for A. So that's here, that's the 11 squared. Once you've figured that out, the other two sides just get plugged in for B and C. So my other two sides are 14 and 12. So I have B squared plus C squared, 14 squared plus 12 squared, over 2 times 14 times 12. So that's what we need. So my first step is going to be to evaluate that gnarly looking fraction. So C is going to be cosine inverse of that. So let's get out the calculator. 14 squared plus 12 squared equals minus 11 squared equals. So now I have my top of my fraction, that's 219, and then over 2 times 14 times 12, 2 times 14 times 12, that's going to give me 336. Now I can do the rest in one step. What I've got is 219 divided by 336. That equals a decimal. Now I just take the inverse cosine of that decimal, and I get 49.3 degrees. So C equals 49.3 degrees. Now that you've finished the video, take a moment and jot down some notes or questions for our next class. Remember that you can also watch the video again if you want to increase your understanding. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, and if you'd like to help me grow my YouTube channel, please click subscribe.